here. Okay, a Toastmaster since 2012, Katie joined Toastmasters with the goal of one day making a career of public speaking. In 2015, Katie seized on an opportunity to make her dream a reality and is now the president of Katie Rigsby Inspires, LLC, where she provides inspirational keynote speeches and educational seminars to organizations nationwide. Katie is an advanced communicator and leader silver with Toastmasters International and a member of National Speakers Association. Katie is past district director and experienced roaster with Making Toastmasters Roastmasters. Please welcome Katie Rigsby.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I can hear all of you yelling and screaming and, chanting my name. Yes, I feel it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So Vanessa's 100% right. The roast is so much fun, but it can also be something that seems like a daunting task, and it can create anxiety, not only for the person who is having to roast someone else, but also for the person who's being roasted. So today is not just about helping guide you through the process of the roast, but it's also helping to warm Shirley up to the feeling and just to let her know that it's going to be okay and it's going to be exciting and fun. So one of the things that I really want to kind of find out right off the bat is how experienced you guys are with roasting. So obviously I know Vanessa and Tabitha and Chick, you guys have all been involved in a roast. Phil, probably numerous roasts, but just put in the chat for me if you are, a roasting virgin or you're an experienced roaster. Write it in the chat for me. I want to hear about your experience with the roast. All right, let's see. Phil says, I've experienced both ends of it. Glenn is a roasting virgin. A novice roaster for Carolyn. Novice, is it novice or novice? How do you say it? Somebody be the grammarian.
Novice?
I think it's novice.
Novice. Tabitha says that I was her first roast. Oh, Tabitha. And she's experienced with a couple of other people. All right, Christina's a roasting virgin. Yes, we've done a number. John says I've done a number of roasts, mostly club settings, been roasted too. Awesome. Okay, so cool. So few of you in the room are newbies to this. Some of you are experienced. The goal today is to help you feel like when you leave today that you have more of a guide and you're better prepared, so the next time you are asked to roast someone or perhaps be the roastee, you kind of know what to expect and you can prepare with confidence and be ready. So for those of you who have never done a roast before, I know it's 5:30, we're all getting hungry. This is not the kind of roast that we're talking about, okay? The kind of roast that we want to really think about is kind of the Friars Club roast. So it's intended to be a humorous event. And it is an event where you get together and we celebrate a guest of honor. So in our situation, in our case, it's going to be the district director. And this is an opportunity to kind of share their accomplishments and their achievements, but also to kind of poke fun at some of their idiosyncrasies, some situations that maybe they got themselves in that were funny or unique. And so it's an opportunity to do it in a lighthearted and fun way. So really what I want you to think about is when you get ready to participate in the roast, really think about your role and what is the expectation of you? And we're going to talk about the various roles in a roast in just a minute. But really thinking about, like, if I am asked or if I volunteer to roast someone, I want to make sure that I'm not just going to come in with a bunch of, zings and just hit them over the head over and over. I also want to have some really positive and great things to say about them. It's not just an opportunity to get up there and like sling mud at someone, or at least it shouldn't be. So we want to think about what are we celebrating and who are we celebrating, why are we celebrating them, and how can we celebrate them and honor them in this way, but also make it fun and exciting for the people in the room who aren't participating in the roast. So we want to really think about that it takes skill. And really what I want you to know is, like Martha Stewart, you can learn to make a roast in your kitchen, but you can also learn to be a roast master. Martha Stewart has done both, and both seemingly well. So just know that this is something that you can learn, okay? It's not something that you have to be born with or that you have to be great at. And sometimes it does take once or twice to get it under your belt and out of your system to then become really good at roasting others. So the first thing that we really have to think about when it comes to the roast is the rules. What are the rules of the roast? And one of the things that I don't know if Vanessa already shared it with you or not, but in the previous Toastmasters education system, when we used manuals, there was a specialty speech manual, and one of the specialty speeches is the roast. And so Vanessa, have you had an opportunity to share that with people, or are you going to share it afterwards with the attendees?
I think I'll go ahead and share it afterwards. I did see you give me that.
Yeah. Okay, so basically it's just a 2-page document where it tells you a little bit about the roast, and it gives you some guidelines so you can kind of know what to expect and how to handle the roast. And so we'll share that with you afterwards, but everything that I have in this presentation is kind of like lagniappe. It's all in addition to what you'll receive. So we're not going to be repeating very much of it. So the rules of the roast. First and foremost, you have to make sure that you have permission and you only use willing participants. So, there's a big difference between basically, putting people down, criticizing, bullying people, and roasting people. And we want to make sure that the people who are involved in the roast are willing participants. So not only the guest of honor, but you have to also understand that all of the roasters will have the privilege of being roasted a little bit themselves. So they have to understand that you can't just be somebody that dishes it out. You also have to be willing to take it. So we always get permission from willing participants, and then know that, hey, if you're part of the roast, it's likely that you're going to get a little singed during the process. So you want to make sure that if you're going to dish it out, you're willing to take it. The next thing you want to try to do is avoid some inside jokes. So I'll give you an example. Right now, I could say, hey, Vanessa, as program quality director, did you share your markers? Vanessa and I have this inside joke because I have particular markers that I like to use when I use presentations, when I do presentations, and when I go somewhere like a TLI, I bring my markers for myself and I bring other markers for everyone else. Vanessa knows that she's only allowed to use the markers that I brought for her, not my markers. But if I said that to her and you did not know the backstory, then you would feel left out and it wouldn't be funny. It would only be funny to Vanessa, hopefully, and to me. So what's really important, Vanessa said she couldn't share hers with anyone. Yeah. So what's really important is that if you have some of those inside jokes, so if I'm going to use that example of the marker situation, in fact, that's something that Vanessa brought up in my roast when she roasted me. She prefaced it by sharing a little anecdote about it, by telling a little story about it before she hit us with the punchline. So make sure that you're not just using inside jokes that only you and the other person, or you and maybe 2 or 3 other people know about, because it leaves the whole audience out. It makes them feel alienated. And the thing about the roast is when you lose the audience, it's hard to get them back. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're keeping them engaged and they feel like they're part of the fun. Next, you do not want to be mean-spirited, cruel, or rude. It's very, very important to understand that this is supposed to be like lighthearted fun. It's not supposed to be something that is mean. It's not supposed supposed to be something where people leave and they feel like you've put them down the whole time, or they're like, man, they really didn't like me. Oh man, they thought I was a super, B word. You want to make sure that people leave there feeling like, yes, you might have poked fun at them a little bit, but also you had some really amazing things to say, which brings me to the next rule. You always share more good than bad. So I want you to think of a roast kind of like an evaluation. Now, of course, in an evaluation, we're not poking fun at people and we're not, making jokes at their expense. But what are the rules of an evaluation? We tell them what they did well, we tell them how they can improve, and then we tell them what they did well, right? So in the roast, you might start with some jokes or some funny anecdotes, but you always want to end with something that's positive, inspirational, helpful. What did they mean to you? How did they change your life? Something good. Now, at the very tail end, I like to end on a laugh, right? So you'll start with something funny, make sure you include a bunch of good stuff, and then tie back in, or what we call call back to something funny in your roast. So always share more good than bad. And then you want to make sure you always have a plan and a structure. So just like any other speech, the roast is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should have a thought out process that makes sense. Each thing should lead into the next. So you want to make sure you have a plan and a structure in place. And then you definitely need to practice, especially when delivering a roast, because so much of it is about comedic timing. And there's certain things where you're going to need to pause to allow people to laugh. Or maybe you need to pause so that they can get the point, and then you can hit them with the place where they're supposed to laugh. So it's really important that you practice your timing and clear your material, especially if you think that something may be a little too close to the line. You always want to clear that material with someone who knows the roastie really well. I know for me, when I was preparing to roast Tina, I wanted to make sure, because even though I knew her, I didn't know her as well as, let's say, when I roasted Mohammed. And so I wanted to make sure that what I was going to say wasn't going to hurt her feelings. It wasn't just, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to hurt her feelings. So I pulled in a couple of people that knew her really well and said, hey, how do you think this is going to hit? What do you think this is going to do? And so really trying out your material and clearing it with someone who is an experienced roaster and who knows the other people who will be in the room is key. So any questions so far about the rules? All right, wonderful, thank you, great examples. Okay, cool. And if you have any questions at any time, do not hesitate to just throw them in the chat, and then I'll ask Vanessa to read them to me, or I'll try to keep up with them. So keep the comments coming. I love to see your comments in the chat. I love to see questions, whatever, so keep it coming. You guys are doing awesome. Okay, so now that we've established some of the ground rules and kind of what to expect, let's talk about the key roles for the roast. So there's really going to be 3 key participants. There's a 4th one that we'll talk about, but there's 3 key participants that really need to be prepared for the roast. And the first is the roastee. So that's your guest of honor. So in this case, it's going to be Shirley, right? So what does the roastee have to do? Well, first of all, they have to be a willing participant, right? They have to understand what a roast is. If you have someone, let's just pretend that Shirley had never been to a roast, never heard of a roast, and we were like, Shirley, we're gonna roast you on the last day of the conference. You show up, it's gonna be fun. And then she shows up and we all insult her. It's not gonna be fun for Shirley, right? So yeah, Shirley, we wanna know right now, are you a willing participant? We need consent, Shirley, we need consent. Yeah, so first and foremost, the roastie has to know that you're actually roasting them and what a roast is. That's the first thing. They have to be a willing participant. But then, roastie, listen up, Shirley. You're not just sitting back and like taking the heat and all the accolades and the compliments and all the praise and then like, see you later, deuces. No. Next, you're going to have an opportunity to return the favor. So you want to make sure that you're prepared a little bit in advance for who is roasting you, because you're going to be able to fire back at them. Remember, one of the rules, don't dish it out if you can't take it. So remember, Shirley is going to be able to give it back to you. So you want to make sure that you are prepared for what Shirley might have on you. If she's got some dirt on you, you better start sending her flowers, some chocolate, some candy, you know, get her a pedicure, just really treat her well, because she's gonna hit you with the fire too. Okay, so roastie has to be the willing participant. They have to know what's happening. They need to know who the panelists are that are going to roast them. And they have to be prepared to also give a little heat back. Then you have the roast master. And the roast master is very similar to what you would be in a Toastmasters meeting. Same thing as the Toastmaster. You are the master of ceremonies. So as the roast master, it's your job to introduce the audience to the process of the roast. It's your job as the roast master to introduce each of the roasters. You'll give them a little heat each time you do that. It's your job to come back after a roaster is finished and kind of put a little bow on it and tie it into the next roaster. And it's your job to make sure you stay on time. And so the master of ceremonies really has to kind of be on their game, because they are large and in charge. It's about the guest of honor, but the master of ceremonies kind of holds all of the power there. And so it's really important when you're preparing people for a roast that they know how much time they're going to have to speak. And, you know, sometimes you'll use the red, yellow, green lights. Sometimes at Muhammad's roast, Greg Kitchen was the master of ceremonies, and he had a rubber chicken that squeaked. And so he would squeak that rubber chicken when somebody was getting close to time. So you're kind of the person that does that. And at mine, you know, it was just kind of like, oh, hell broke loose, and everybody just talked as long as they wanted to, because we were just like, oh, but it was a whole lot of fun. And then the third role is the roasters themselves. This is the slate of speakers, the people who will be speaking and roasting your guest of honor. So they should come with prepared material. And they should also know who else is going to be on the panel, because as a roaster, you don't typically just roast the guest of honor, and you won't roast everyone else on every one of the other roasters, but you might roast one or two. So for instance, if we have, you know, Vanessa, Tabitha, Chick, Phil, myself, and Shirley, and we're all part of the roasting panel, if I am getting up to roast Carolyn, of course, most of my material is going to be about Carolyn, but I also might have a few anecdotes about Vanessa or Chick, or definitely the roast master, right? Because they're introducing me and they're kind of the master of ceremonies. So you're going to kind of sprinkle the pain around a little bit, so that Shirley's not just getting drilled by, you know, everybody's insults, right? So as a roaster, your responsibility is to come prepared. Your responsibility is to stay on time. And your responsibility is to make sure you have more good than bad, right? And you can, now I will say this, as the roaster, let's say that Carolyn is our guest of honor, and I'm going to, you know, zing Vanessa as one of the other roasters. Now, I'm not going to follow it up with, but Vanessa, I love you and you're so great. No, we're honoring Carolyn, right? So I'm going to give my zing to Vanessa, because she's probably got a zing back to me. It's not going to be hurtful. It's not going to be crude, rude. It's just going to be, you know, again, you know, how much was your marker budget, Vanessa? You know, something that's going to trigger a response with her. So 3 main roles. But the 4th role, even though I don't have it on the slide, the 4th role is the most important because that's the audience, right? And so we have to remember, if I'm the roastee, Shirley, as the guest of honor, you've got to remember people are watching your face as this is happening, right? So you got to make sure that they're going to be looking to you. If they feel like, you know, maybe somebody pushed the line a little bit, they're going to look at Shirley. Oh, how did Shirley respond? Because sometimes they're going to look at you to know if they can laugh or not. Right. So you have to remember that they're giving you are giving good clues or cues to the audience. As the Roastmaster, again, not every roaster is going to necessarily be, you know, slick and great. So you're going to have to kind of pick up that and keep the audience kind of engaged and tied in to the roast and kind of help with that. Of course, you're not going to make them feel bad, or you're not going to say, oh man, that was you really blew that one. No, you want to be encouraging as the master of ceremonies, but you have to remember that it's your job to keep that audience going and engaged, and you really have to take hold of the room. Each time one speaker leaves and a new one is coming in. And then as a roaster, again, you have to think about the audience. Are they going to understand where I'm coming from? Are they going to get the punchline? Do they have enough knowledge about this particular topic, joke, or situation that I can, say it in a very short amount of time and they'll get it? Or is it going to require this long backstory in order to get into it? If it's going to require a long backstory to get to my little joke, it's probably not for the roast. Because, say it another time when you're at brunch with the group, but don't say it in the roast. Because we want to make sure that we're, short, quick anecdotes, make me laugh. Tell me a story, make me laugh. Tell me something great about this person, and then come in with a one-liner. Right? So we want to make sure that it's kind of hitting quickly. This is not something that goes very slowly. It's a quick process. Any questions so far about the roles of the roast, the rules of the roast? You also want to make sure you have a good audience, right? You want to make sure that the audience knows what a roast is too. So that's another responsibility of the roast master. Those of us who have been doing this for a long time, especially if you've gone from a deck member and you've worked your way up to trio, you've seen these done 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times. So you know what a roast is. But we have new Toastmasters who, what have they learned? This is supposed to be a positive and encouraging environment. And then all of a sudden we're going in a room and we're slamming people. Whoa, wait a second, right? So as the master of ceremonies, my job is to prepare the audience for what they're about to hear and kind of just take their temperature throughout the process and make sure that they're okay through that as well. So 3 key roles, but we all have to be responsible and conscious of the audience. All right, Tabitha says, where is Greg and his chicken? Is that a D68 special? Yes, exactly. It was very burned that day. It was burnt to a crisp. I don't think the chicken survived. All right, so now let's talk about the agenda. When it comes to the roast, and I'm going to use this example of Muhammad's roast. And so, of course, these times don't have to be specific, but this is a good structure for a roast. So first and foremost, you're going to have someone who has opening remarks, and then they introduce the roast master, just like you would in a club meeting, and you have the president who introduces the Toastmaster. It's the same situation. So that might be, Vanessa, that might be a good role for you because you would be second in line after Shirley, right? So you may be the person who has the opening remarks and maybe explains a little bit about a roast, and then you introduce the roast master. So that's why it gives you a little more time to do that, because it's with the understanding you're going to explain what that roast is. Then after she introduces or he introduces the Roastmaster, now the Roastmaster will spend about 3 to 5 minutes, depending on what you've allotted to them, to welcome the audience and kind of bring some heat, kind of start. It's kind of like the warm-up act when you go to a comedy show, right? I'm warming up the audience, because if you just put the first roaster out there and everybody's cold, then it's not going to hit as well. So the Roastmaster kind of breaks the tension, and they warm the audience up so that they're ready for what's about to happen. So that's why they get that 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning. They'll spend about 3 minutes, warming the audience up, some one-liners, kind of, just picking on, various people on the slate of speakers. And then they may even say something about the guest of honor. But it's not their time to kind of go off on their own speech about the guest of honor. Remember, they have these contact points between each speaker. So the Roastmaster doesn't really get a big portion of time, because they have so much time during the whole event. So 3 to 5 minutes, welcome, and then introduce the first roaster. And then between each roaster, usually about 60 seconds. To tie up what the last roaster said and tie into what the next roaster, with their introduction. And when we say introduction, it's not going to be an introduction like what Vanessa just did. It'll be something that is funny. So you could say, Katie Rigsby, our next roaster is a past district director, but she also has affinity for shoes. In fact, it's been told that when she travels, she has 1 bag for clothes and toiletries and 6 bags for shoes. I've seen her credit card bill or something like that. I don't know. That was just very off the cuff. Wasn't very funny, but that allows you to tell me a little bit about me and my credentials, but then give me a little bit of heat, right? So you're going to say something about the next roaster. So you'll do that between each one. And then at the very end, after the last roaster, you'll do an outro, kind of tie it up in a little bow. And now you'll do an introduction of the honoree. This is an opportunity for you to roast them just a little bit. Again, 3 minutes max, just to roast them a little bit and introduce the honoree. And then you have the roasters. So each roaster usually will speak for 2 to 3 minutes. Again, it depends on your event, how much time you have put aside. If it's an hour, then, that's going to dictate, depending on how many people are roasting, it will dictate how much time everybody has. So the fewer people you have, the more time they'll have. And the longer you make the event, the more time people have, or the more people you can accommodate. But typically 2 to 3 minutes of just good natured jokes, anecdotes, peppered with a little praise and affinity is key. Phil says he got pulled into D54's roast of their district director last year, and the Roastmaster introduced him as, "Isn't it great when your boss shows up to the party?" Love it. Yes. Isn't it great when your boss shows up to the party? Our next roaster is, Phil Verona. So very good. That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that, Phil. So 2 to 3 minutes for each roaster. And then the roastee, this is the guest of honor. And remember, they have sat there for probably a good 50 minutes of people just grilling them, right? I mean, they are like getting burnt to a crisp. So they are the honoree. They're the person who's going to wrap it up. And so they're going to get 8 to 10 minutes of payback and gratitude. So this is going to be the opportunity for them to kind of come back and roast the people who have been roasting them, and also share any words of gratitude or thanks for the event. So that's just in general. But again, depends on how long you want your event to be, depends on how many people you are going to include on the panel of roasters. And it depends on, just what type of atmosphere you're trying to create. But usually 2 to 3 minutes. And when you read through that manual, I believe that's what it says. It may say 3 to 5 minutes, but it's somewhere between that 2 to 5 minute mark is kind of key. Plus, you have to remember that everybody's humor is different, right? So the idea is to allow someone to get up and do portion. Give me 1 second, guys. That's embarrassing. That's never supposed to happen. That's something you can roast me about. I'm supposed to be a pro. All right. There we go. We are now locked in. Okay, so we want to make sure that we do have an agenda though, because again, think about the audience. The audience should know what to expect, and the roasters should know where they fall in line. That's also important. And your master of ceremonies needs to know what the order is so that they can properly introduce the person. It should never be a surprise, right? So as ceremonies, I shouldn't just kind of willy-nilly decide who's going to go when. Each person should really know where they fall in line so that they can prepare appropriately. The other thing you can kind of assume is that, like, if you, so looking at this agenda, I was roaster number 6. So Chick went before me, Jeff, Tina, Jean, Jean. You know, at this point, those people would have had an opportunity to say something about me. Annie hasn't had her opportunity yet, right? So I probably wouldn't really say much about Annie. In this situation, I did because she was one of the trio members. And so I did include her. But, you know, think about that. Who has gone before me? Because they're going to have an opportunity to say something about me. So I should probably maybe have something, again, not about everyone, but pick 2 or 3 people and build off of there. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, so we've talked about what a roast is. We've talked about the rules of the roast. We've talked about the roles, who's involved in the roast, and we talked about the agenda. So now let's talk about the actual roast, the actual content. And there's really several different ways that you can do it, but there's 3 key ways that I like to use, and three key formats that I think make for a great roast. Now, you can choose one of these 3, 2 of these 3, or all 3. For me personally, I think a great roast is made up of all 3, but they may not all 3 be your style. So it's important to find the style that works best for you and your comedic delivery. What you don't want to happen is for you to feel uncomfortable with the material, because that affects the way that you deliver it, right? So practice is key, confidence is key. So find the one that, you know, resonates with you the best. So the first thing that you can use is some of these one-liners. Okay, so here's the thing about one-liners. It's probably one of the easiest things to do in a roast because Google's your best friend. So Tabitha, put in the chat what one of your hobbies is. Just a hobby or something you like besides Toastmasters. Don't pick Toastmasters, but just put in the chat one of your hobbies, going to the dog park. Okay, so if I know this about Tabitha, then if I'm terrible at writing jokes and I really don't know anything else about Tabitha except that she likes going to the dog park, I can just put into Google jokes about the dog park, right? And then when those jokes come back, I can make them fit into Tabitha. So for instance, and I'm just trying to, Tabitha, Tabitha told me the other day that she went to the dog park last week and, she's really been struggling because each time she goes to the dog park, these men just keep approaching her. And, no matter what she says, they just won't stop. And I said, well, Tabitha, what do you think might be bringing that on? And she's like, I don't know, but I think I'm going to have to get a dog. Okay. Or, and then, I could say something like, well, have you tried telling them they're barking up the wrong tree? Something like that. So that's like a one-liner, right? Barking up the wrong tree. So using these one-liners that you find online and then creating a little story around it, a little antidote around it, and applying it to Tabitha. So you're not just going to read off the jokes from the internet, because anybody can do that, right? But you're going to take that and apply it to Tabitha. So one of the best things you can do is use these one-liners. And here's a good example of the use of a one-liner. This is one of the Friars Club's roast. This is Dean Martin roasting Don Rickles. And this is a great one-liner.
Don inherited his sense of humor. His mother and father were great practical jokers. That's how Don was born.
So, Don Rickles, comedian. He had a great sense of humor. Both true, right? But then he says he inherited it from his parents, and they were both practical jokers. That's how he was born, right? So that's the play on it. So these one-liners are really effective. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is take a minute and write a one-liner. So you can choose someone in this group if you'd like. You can choose me. Why don't you write? I think everybody here knows me, and I'm a willing participant. So at this point, why don't you guys write a one-liner about me and then put it in the chat. I'll give you about 60 seconds, 2 minutes. Write a one-liner about me. You can Google if you need to, and then put it in the chat. Should have thrown some Jeopardy music in here. Okay, Katie, we saw your computer battery, and then I also heard a cat meowing. Did you need to go run and feed your cat too? All right. I would just say that battery sign is actually what my cat does when the cat needs to be fed. The cat just says, low battery. He's got a little button. Did you really mean to yawn during your speech? I wish that Katie's computer would keep up with Katie's high energy. There you go, Hazel. There you go. I like it. That was good. Glenn, I was asked to write a short one-liner for Katie, and so I'm on my knees writing, give me a minute. So I have a dog. I like shoes a lot, kind of an obsession. I'm deathly afraid of spiders. Tofik wants to know, will Katie roast the host? You mean the host of this meeting, like Vanessa?
No, that will not be happening. Thank you for your question, Tofik.
All right, I'll give you a few more seconds. What is made of leather, a foot long, and sounds like a sneeze? One of Katie's shoes. Very good. I like it. Y'all are doing great. Okay, so the practice of a one-liner, it takes some time, right? And then utilizing that throughout your speech. I think they work best if you kind of pepper those one-liners in with some of the other methods. So now let's check out one of the other methods. Is Chick still with us? He might have had to jump off. Okay, so the next method, whoops. There we go. The next method that I encourage you to use is to exaggerate the truth. So this is where you're telling a story that was true or is true, and pieces of it are exaggerated. Again, this works really well if you've had a lot of close experiences. So for trio members, this works really well because you have spent a lot of time together and you probably have some really funny stories. And so here you're going to tell the story, but you're going to put a little twist on it. You're going to exaggerate the truth. So let's see it in action.
A show of hands, how many in here consider themselves Muhammad fans? I want to tell you, you're not. You may like him, but this is a Muhammad fan. Speaking of this, most people believe the urban myth that Katie Rigsby invented these for Muhammad's TED Talk. Now that's based in some truth. She did bring these and supply them to us so that at the TED Talk, when Muhammad walked out, we could all distract him by doing this, which we did. But I have it on good authority. Just so happens, I have a younger cousin who works where Muhammad is employed. And he tells me that these are all over the LSU Health Center, and that whenever Muhammad's supposed to be at work and he's at Toastmasters instead, one of the bosses comes in and people just go. So they think he's there. I've also heard it said that these are placed strategically around his home so his children will remember him.
So I know the video is not great, but he has a Muhammad mask. So it's a picture of Muhammad's face and he was holding it up. So that's a great example of something that was true. We had these masks, we used them at the TED Talk, but obviously they don't have all these masks at work and people aren't putting them up pretending that they're Muhammad working, right? So this is an option for exaggerating, or example of exaggerating the truth. Let's see what Vanessa says. The show will go on if Katie's involved. She has extra markers, backup power cords, and a whole conference plan in her rolling bag just in case something goes wrong or people don't show up. Yeah. But then the way you finish it, Vanessa, is, but she can't remember to plug in her own damn computer, right? Like that's a ba-da-ba, right? Very good, very good. I'm like the Mary Poppins of meetings, right? It's just like, oh, everything comes out of the bag. So a great way to get through a roast is if you have a story to tell, and then you can twist it and exaggerate the truth. But you noticed that he knew the moments that he was going to get a laugh, and he paused and he waited for that to happen before he went on to the next one. So kind of being really aware of your material. That's why you have to test it out, because sometimes we think we're funnier than we actually are. And so we want to make sure that where we think someone is going to laugh, we're actually going to get the laugh. Okay, and the third one that I want to show you, or the third method that I like, is the poke fun and praise. So this is where we're incorporating the humor into the praise. This is actually the very first time I ever roasted someone. So, and I think I had written it, I was not prepared. I had written it a few hours earlier, so I looked at my notes. So that's another reason why you prepare, so you don't have to look at your notes so often. But I think that this, even though, there's some room for improvement for sure, but I think this is a great example of poking fun and adding praise.
If you have been around Tina for more than 5 minutes,
you know that Tina lives and breathes John Maxwell. Tina knows all of his quotes. You can even hire Tina to facilitate a session or workshop featuring John's views and methods. Tina considers John a mentor and a friend. The only thing I want to know is, does John know this? Obsessed much? Seriously, Tina, your leadership has been one for the record books. As John Maxwell once said, good leadership isn't about advancing yourself. It's about advancing your team. Because of your leadership, our district is stronger. Because of your perseverance, our district has broken records. And because of your spirit, our spirit will never be broken. I'm honored to have been given the opportunity to serve with you on your team. And I'm grateful to call you a friend, even if that means that I have to put up with AJ. Okay, so part of the roast, I roasted AJ a little bit. So that was a callback to AJ. So I want to point something out here, a very important mistake that I made. And a friend. The only thing I want to know is, does John know this? Okay, so you see what happened there? I had a joke. I said, the only thing I want to know is, does John know this? And I got a big laugh. But the next thing that I was going to say was a follow-up to that joke was, obsessed much? But the thing is that they were still laughing, and I should have waited until that laughter died off. And then I could have said, obsessed much? And I would have gotten a bigger laugh. But the problem was I spoke on top of that laugh. And so the whole room didn't hear it. Did I still get a laugh? Yeah. But I would have gotten a second follow-up, like bigger laugh, if I would have just waited. So that timing is important, because I delivered the joke. I've got to let that kind of sit and breathe. Now, not uncomfortable silence, but let the laughter die off a little bit and then go, obsessed much? And then you get it again, right? So really, really important. That's a really good example of poking fun, but also how to make sure your timing's right, because my timing was off there. But also that's probably because I didn't practice much. And I didn't expect it to get, I thought it was funny, but I didn't expect it to be like as funny as what I got. And so I stepped on my laugh. So you want to make sure that you're careful with that. So those are 3 techniques that I encourage you, either find one and stick with it because you like it and you think that's going to work for you, or use 2 or use all 3, pepper them all in. But these are 3 techniques that can really make your roast effective. So the first one was one-liners. The second one is to exaggerate the truth. And then the third one is make sure you poke fun and praise. So you always want to make sure that you're incorporating praise, even if you're using just one-liners, even if you're just telling stories and exaggerating the truth. The wrap up, the end of that should be ending with something positive. Okay, a couple of tips that I would like to just add for your benefit so that you can be the best possible roaster in the room is know who the other roasters will be. Again, you need to come prepared not only to roast the guest of honor, but to have a few little zings for the other people in the room. If they know what they're doing, they're going to come at you. So you need to be prepared with some of those as well. You want to limit your roasters. If you are the roast master or you are in charge of the roast, limit your roasters to 5 to 10 max. I think 8 is a really good number, but I would say no more than 10, because again, you're trying to stay within a certain time frame. And if you have too many people, that lessens the amount of time people have, and it's hard for them to keep on track. Or if you have too few people, it's kind of like boring and it can get old really fast. So it's good to mix up the speakers every couple of minutes, and that's why you need several. Also, it's also good for the guest of honor to hear about so many people that have something positive to say. And if you get an overwhelming, I know Vanessa, you're kind of gonna kind of open it up to the district and see who wants to be involved. I would say, and this is just my suggestion, do what you want. This is your event, so it doesn't matter what I think. But my suggestion would be have a cutoff mark and say the first, 8 to 10 people, whatever. But if you have like an overwhelming response, then maybe have people, put a couple of things in writing and or do like record some videos, and then you can maybe show a video later on with little blurbs instead of like giving people full amounts. So that's just again my 2 cents. It means nothing. You always want to have a pen and paper handy because people are going to be zinging you. They're going to be making comments. And this is where our impromptu speaking comes into play. So for Shirley, she better make sure she has a pen and paper, because Shirley, you're going to come prepared with some things, but as people bring things up, then you're going to be like, oh man, I can say something about that, right? And so you're going to be kind of taking notes so that you can do a callback to it. And especially, let's say like Vanessa got a big laugh about the markers when she did my roast, right? So when it was my turn to get up and dish it back, I know she got a big laugh. They liked that story. They connected with that. So I'm going to call back to that because it's going to get me a big laugh, right? So I'm kind of like a laugh robber, right? I'm like, oh, let me just get your laugh because it worked for you. So always have a pen and paper handy. If you're a roaster and you're maybe 4th or 5th in line, you're fair game, right? So you got to know if somebody says something about you, you don't have to pay them back. But if you didn't have anything for them and now all of a sudden you get this really great idea, jot it down. The next thing I would say is try to use props. Whether Greg did this really, really well as the roast master. When we did Mohammed's roast, I ordered the chef hat. That's what Chick was wearing in that video. I ordered the chef's hat for all of the roasters. So everyone who was a roaster had a chef hat. So when you were the audience and you came into the room, you knew who was going to be involved. It wasn't a surprise because they were kind of labeled in a way. And then, Greg had his rubber chicken and he had props for all of us. He had big ears for Jeff Harris because we know he was going to go on and on. So those were part of his roast. So should everybody use props? No, but if there is a prop that is effective, if it's going to add to what you're saying, use it. If it's going to take away from it or it doesn't add anything, then you don't need it. But if you have something that can add to it and can really kind of hit the message home or make people connect with it, use props. And then remember that someone is probably recording, right? So it will probably live on. You may not see it forever, but it's there and somebody might be able to pull it up. So know that somebody's going to be recording. Again, Shirley, remember, everybody's going to be looking at you. You'll probably be recorded. So just remember that you'll be on camera. Consider the differences for a virtual delivery. So Vanessa, can you tell me, is the roast going to be in person or is it going to be virtual since the conference is virtual?
The whole conference is virtual.
Got it. Okay, so this is a whole new world, guys. I would say really take aside and practice this because virtual delivery is going to be different. Just like in this, I've said some things that are possibly funny, but I can't hear you laugh and I can only see some of you because I've got other things going on my screen. So I have to hope that like the person who I'm looking at is a good reflection of the entire audience. So Tina, I don't have this a video of this, but Tina did well. She wasn't able to attend a couple of the roasts, and what she did was she recorded a video, but again, because it was a video and she didn't have an audience, there wasn't anybody laughing. So she actually had like a button she would push and it was like a little kid laughing. And so she incorporated that into her speech, like, now this is the time I want you to laugh, right? And then her using that button was also funny. So it also made you laugh. So it's really important to think about how your items are going to hit virtually. It hits completely different, and it's a completely different feeling when you're in the room and you're delivering jokes and people are laughing and you can feel that that excitement and you can feel that energy. You feed off of it. But when it's virtual, you're like, well, I'm in a room by myself. You know, I got to make sure I think I'm funny. So do whatever you have to do. Put up a screen of a GIF of people just laughing, like,
Was that planned? That seemed planned, huh?
I
mean,
said
she
roast,
really-
so
roast
that
moment,
you
roast moment.
feel more comfortable.
That time that
and
Katie
then
broke
you
the
want-
Zoom.
Did something happen?
When
What
you started
happened?
laughing, you froze completely. And now you're frozen.
Oh, it's funny.
Your head was all back,
Oh,
like
okay.
you were really into it. You were just laughing so hard.
That's funny. Is that better? I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me? Okay, I got a thumbs up from Phil. Okay, and so the last thing is to do your research. So watch other roasts. Now, let me just say this. If you go Google and you watch roast, probably the first thing that's going to come up are these Comedy Central roasts, which can be really funny, but they can also be very raunchy and they can be really mean. So just know that that's the content that you might look for. So just be careful when you're watching it, but I don't want you to watch it for like the material. I want you to watch it for the delivery. I want you to watch it for what types of things are they, you know, looking at. You don't want to make fun of people's looks, or again, no rude, no crude, don't be mean, but idiosyncrasies, funny habits, a funny story. These are all things. So do some research and watch people who do roasts and do them well. Jeff Ross, he's known as the roast master, and he says, I only roast the ones I love. And that's what I want you guys to remember, is that this roast is supposed to come from a place of love and adoration. It's not supposed to come from a place of mean-spiritedness or you know,
You're frozen again, Katie, going in and out.
coming into and you want to, but the good news is we're coming to the end. So I want to make sure that you know that Saturday, April 9th, that is going to be the roast of our district director, Shirley Birch. If you want to be involved in the roast, then go ahead and let Vanessa know, because she was probably going to limit the number of roasters. So you want to be first on the list, and make sure that you sign up to do it. Any questions? I don't know what's going on with the internet. I'm sorry, guys. I have a house full of people, so maybe they're all on devices and we're all.
Well, while people are looking for the questions they want to ask, I really want to thank you. So this was a lot of good training for me, because I've seen it done and I've participated, but a lot of what you detailed here, I did not know.
Oh, well, good. I'm
So thank
glad.
you.
I'm glad you learned something from today's session. And if you guys have any questions about, you know, a roast or whatever, feel free to email me, call me, text me, whatever. I'll throw my cell phone number in the group here so that you guys can reach out if you want help. But it's definitely something that's so much fun to be a part of. But you do have to prepare, and you have to make sure that, again, you're willing and you're able and you can dish it out and take it. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. And I'm happy if anybody has any questions, let me know. If not, then we'll call it a night, but I didn't see anything. Thank you, Dahlia. Thank you, Tabitha. Thank you, Brendan. Oh, hey, Brendan, I didn't see you. Come on. Glenn, thank you. Thanks, Phil. Oh, I'm glad. Oh, I was able to teach an old dog new tricks, huh, Phil?
Well, there you go. Consider I learned by trying to just watch and figure out myself. So yeah, I definitely appreciate this.
That's what I was was thinking we never had this training before. And I participated in so many. This was great. This was great. Thank you. I'll try to keep my zinging to a minimum.
Okay, y'all.
The video is usually something we think of very last. Vanessa, I was just going to say that the video is something we usually think of the last minute. And I remember like when we did Mohammed's roast, I was like, oh, we should, I wanted to live stream it in the Facebook group. And so I set up my phone and then my phone died.
Oh.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Because I wasn't prepared to record it, right? And then we didn't really, nobody planned to have mine record. Somebody recorded it in the it was a fun memory. And so if and then what might happen if the lights go out? So, all right, guys, have a good night and thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for being on. Remember, we will have our conference. We'll start marketing it this week coming. We're going to start letting you know who is involved in the conference itself. If you want to be part of the roast, I am looking for a roast master. I'm looking for roastees. We did get permission from Shirley to actually roast her. And it is, to me, a gift we can give to her. And it's something she'll remember forever because this is a wonderful opportunity being district director and for everyone and for her to see other people's experience of working with her throughout the year. So I will post this video on our YouTube, our Facebook, and I'm also going to add the project that Katie talked about in conjunction with that. So thank you so much, Katie. You always over deliver, and this was fabulous. And I hope to see you soon. I know you're having a lot of life events now, but I hope to see you back in the district like you used to be. All right, y'all. So give everybody, I know everybody was saying in the chat how wonderful it was. If you want to have last few words for our presenter, Katie, you can do that before I close the meeting. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the recording.